So if you're running a business or maybe managing a territory, you are intimately familiar with a specific and frankly infuriating kind of frustration.
Yeah.
Your pipeline is full. I mean, your calendar is absolutely jammed with meetings, calls, demos, follow-ups. You are working harder than ever before.
But then you check the contract count at the end of the week.
Exactly. 0, maybe 1. It is this paradox that just drives people crazy.
Yeah.
Many leads, few contracts.
Right.
And our sources for this deep dive, they frame the issue perfectly. They ask, why does one person in the exact same market selling a similar product close maybe one contract out of 100 leads?
While another person right next to them is consistently closing 8 or 9 out of every 10.
That gap, that's what we're talking about today, the 1% closer versus the 90% closer.
And the immediate temptation, like you said, is to blame everything external.
Of course.
It's the product, it's the price, the economy's bad. Maybe it's just, bad luck.
Okay, let's unpack that. Because the research we looked at suggests the difference is, well, it's rarely about those things.
What's really fascinating is that the sources propose the fundamental issue is a mistaken perspective.
A mistaken perspective.
Yeah. The seller who's struggling, the one with the 1% close rate, they view the customer with this scarcity mindset. They see them as a trophy to be won.
Or an opportunity to grasp tightly.
Exactly, before the competition does. And as we all know, the moment you grasp something too tightly,
You trigger resistance.
Yeah.
You suffocate the whole conversation. The moment you treat a potential client like a target, they feel it instantly.
they do.
So our mission for this deep dive is to fundamentally shift that perspective. We're moving from viewing the customer as a resource to be extracted to seeing them as a person who needs clarity.
And structure and respect.
Yes, this dive is essentially about the ethical framework of selling, where a precise, respectful process becomes your most powerful tool.
I like that.
So let's start with why we fail. The sources are very, very clear on this. The core fear a customer has isn't of your product or your price. It's the fear of the feeling of being controlled, of being manipulated.
And this fear is activated by what one source colorfully calls heathen enthusiasm.
Heathen enthusiasm. I love that. What is that?
It's hinvomin. If you translate it, it's something like enthusiasm without wisdom.
Okay.
So this is the seller who's aggressive, high energy, completely dedicated, but their dedication is focused entirely in the wrong place.
I think we've all been on the receiving end of that
Yeah.
intense, almost desperate energy that makes you instantly want to put up a shield.
Exactly.
But why does a customer interpret that as a threat and not, say, competence?
Because that high-energy seller, they confuse talking about themselves with demonstrating value. The sources detail these failure points the customer recognizes immediately.
Like what?
Well, it starts when the meeting devolves into the seller's focus, talking about their company's mission, their personal achievements, their past wins.
Oh, the slide with the logos?
Yes, the blurry client logos, they probably don't even have authorization to show.
And the customer's internal dialogue is never, wow, what a winner. It's, why are they trying so hard to convince me? Are they trying to convince themselves?
Precisely. And this self-focused approach quickly leads to what we call the sales ritual.
The canned pitch.
The canned, generic 7-question script that they use for every single meeting, no matter who the client is. And it just confirms to the customer, this person hasn't prepared for my situation. I'm just another number.
You realize you've been slotted into a box before you've even really started talking. And if that fails, then we get the follow-up nightmare.
Yes.
This is the sequence that causes people to consider, throwing their phone into the sea just for some peace.
The examples in the source material are tragically accurate. The chain goes first an email late on a Saturday night.
Did you get my email?
And when they don't reply, the seller follows up with a text. I'm texting to remind you of the email. And when that doesn't work, they escalate. I'm calling you now to remind you of the text reminding you of the email.
That is dedication. But it's dedication in the wrong direction.
Completely. The seller's working hard, no doubt. But that 1% close rate is a direct result of focusing on persistence instead of process.
So the core insight here is that successful sellers don't wait for lightning strikes. They don't rely on luck or perfect timing.
They build a lightning rod. And that lightning rod, it's not a flashy gadget or some clever script. It's the process itself.
I love that analogy. A lightning rod doesn't force the lightning.
No, it just makes the connection inevitable when the conditions are right. They structure the relationship so that when the customer needs help, the connection is logical, reliable, and grounded in a low-pressure process.
Okay, so this brings us to the core shift. If the customer resists being pushed, then we have to align with their internal rhythm.
That's the fundamental truth. Customers only advance when the next step is logical for them. Not for your quota, not for your sales target, but aligned with their specific psychological state.
Which raises the big question. What is that customer's psychological journey?
Well, the sources identify 4 sequential stages, or nutchuandong, as they call them.
4-stage.
4. And the most common cause of failure is trying to skip from stage 1 straight to stage 4.
It's like asking someone to marry you on the first date.
Exactly. You might get a laugh, but you won't get a contract. So let's walk through them.
Okay, stage 1. Listening and learning. This sounds obvious, but it's where so many sellers fail.
It is. The seller needs to give the cheapest but rarest gift, which is the opportunity for the customer to be truly listened to.
Without interruption or judgment.
Right. Sellers worry if I'm quiet, they'll think I'm not an expert. But it's the opposite. The successful seller doesn't need to talk to prove expertise. They ask the right questions.
To reveal the real, maybe unstated problem.
Yes. Silence, when used correctly, it actually opens the customer up. They finally articulate the core challenge, the thing they maybe haven't even been able to name internally yet.
So you're listening to bring clarity to them, not talking to prove clarity in yourself.
That's it.
Okay, so once that true problem is on the table, how do we move on without just, throwing a PowerPoint deck at them saying, here's our solution?
You transition into stage 2, creating curiosity. The goal here is transformation, not presentation.
Yeah.
You avoid preaching or persuading. You don't lecture them. Instead, you paint a compelling vision of what life looks like after the problem is solved.
It's future pacing.
Yeah.
You're asking, if this core problem we just uncovered were solved correctly, how would your world change? What would be different for your team in 90 days?
Exactly. And you have to use the customer's language. No jargon. Curiosity is a powerful internal driver.
Right.
When you pique that interest, the customer stops waiting for you to convince them. They start thinking, this vision of success, I want that.
And then they ask the key question.
They ask the question that transitions the sale. So, what is the next step to achieve that?
That's the signal. Because if they don't ask, they aren't ready. But once they do, that's your cue for stage 3, co-creation.
This is where it gets really interesting because this stage completely changes the dynamic.
How so?
The seller doesn't just deliver a proposal. Delivering a proposal is passive. It's asking for criticism. Instead, you co-design the solution with the client. Often live in the meeting.
And the sources break this down into 4 parts, right? It has to be structured.
Yes, 4 non-negotiable parts. First, you define the clear goal together. Second, you establish the plan to reach that goal.
Okay.
Third, you identify the implementation team, who on their side and who on your side is responsible. And fourth, the agreement of terms. You align on investment and timeline.
So the customer is essentially building the proposal with us.
They're building the architecture of it, yes. By defining the goal, the plan, the team, and the terms together, the customer becomes a co-creator.
They're committed to it before the contract is even printed.
They've given you dozens of small, incremental nods along the way.
Which makes stage 4, receiving agreement, feel anticlimactic. In a good way.
In the best way. The contract signing isn't some tense, high-pressure moment.
No cheesy closing lines needed.
It's just the final piece of paperwork that follows all the small agreements you already made. If you do stage 3 correctly, there is no tension in stage 4.
And this is the painful secret to failure, isn't it? Sellers skip steps. They try to leap from stage 1, we found a problem, straight to stage 4, sign here.
Without earning any of those small nods. And what this tells us is really profound. Good process is a form of respect. Following the customer's psychological rhythm is ethical selling. It forces you to serve their needs before your own.
But this process, it requires confronting a major hurdle for a lot of sellers. That sweet prison, the vung toy.
My comfort zone.
Yeah, where we're afraid of silence or asking the wrong question or admitting we don't know an answer right away.
That comfort zone is actually a detention center. It's holding you back. And the way out, the sources say, isn't by becoming some Superman who knows everything. It's by becoming the clarifier.
The clarifier. You need what they call clarity in dialogue, or tun tao.
Yeah.
What does that look like in practice?
It means you're focusing the conversation on 3 deep areas. First, the future vision. You force them to articulate it. What do you want this to look like in 1 year? Specifically, what metrics change?
That avoids the vague answers.
Exactly. Second, detail and context. You're digging for constraints. What metrics matter most? Where's the real bottleneck? Who feels the pain?
And third?
Third is connections. Understanding the whole landscape. Who else needs to sign off on this? Who is the ultimate decision maker? What data are we still missing?
By driving that kind of detailed conversation, you elevate yourself from, a product peddler to a strategic consultant.
You're helping them solve their own internal issues, not just buying your product. And the crucial realization here, the thing that unlocks this whole system, is that customers resist being pushed, not the solution itself.
So the next step has to feel like a gift, not a trap.
Precisely. The logical conclusion of their own clarity.
Okay, let's make this actionable for everyone listening. Starting tomorrow, before every single meeting, the source prescribes 3 critical actions. Number 1.
Write 1 line on your notepad, listen and learn.
That's your intention for the whole meeting.
Number 2. Prepare 5 specific targeted questions. Not generic ones. The sources gave some great examples.
Yeah, the first one's great. What is currently costing you the most in money, people's time, or opportunity cost?
The second, if this is solved, what is the clearest desired change you want to see in the next 90 days?
Third, who is most affected by this problem internally? Which team feels the daily grind of this?
Fourth, what have you already tried to solve this and why did it fail to stick?
And the fifth one, which is maybe the most powerful, what is the concrete cost of inaction if you do nothing for another 6 months? Why is that one so critical?
Because it forces immediate accountability. If you just ask, do you want to solve this? The answer is always yes.
Of course.
But when you asked about the cost of inaction, you force them to confront the pain of delay. It shifts the whole dynamic from, should I buy this, to, can I afford not to move forward?
That is brilliant. Okay, so action number 3, and this is the hardest one for people stuck in that 1% trap.
It is. Close the meeting only on the next logical step, not the contract, unless you are truly at stage 4.
Do not skip stages.
Never. And when a seller commits to this disciplined process, the transformation is complete. The customer doesn't just buy, they become an advocate. They see the seller not as some necessary evil,
but as a strategic consultant who helped them clarify their own goals.
That's the definition of building a lightning rod. The seller is no longer selling a product, they're selling clarity.
And that brings us back to that core principle. Selling is not the art of talking until the customer believes in you.
It's the art of listening until the customer believes in themselves and in you, because you help them get there.
It sounds so simple.
But it demands that you set down your ego to pick up the contract. That's the trade-off.
So here's a provocative thought for you to carry into your next critical conversation, maybe even tomorrow. Try this little experiment. Make a conscious effort to speak 20% less to sound smart, and instead ask 20% more to awaken the customer to their own potential solution. How does the entire dynamic of the meeting shift when you drop your self-focus and realize that your ultimate job is not to convince, but to clarify?